I'm there we go. Okay, so you can hear me all right?
Yep.
That's cool. Am I really delayed?
Nope, not at all.
That's cool. I was trying to um, tether to my phone because I think I get better internet with that. But that's why it took so long because I'm like trying to figure that stuff out and it just wasn't working. I'm like, boo, all this craziness with internet and being out in the sticks. It's
Oh
uh,
no.
it's ridiculous.
So are you guys getting Mage?
Maybe. I think that's something that we're going to be looking at. Um, like we signed up for it, and like at the hub we've got Mage right now. Yeah, but I'm just at
Oh,
home.
okay.
Yeah, so at the hub it's actually pretty good. Um, but yeah, out in the boondocks it's not as good. But
Oh, that's sucky.
yeah, we'll make it work. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
By the way, we're recording, so we're just going for it.
We're
Uh,
recording already?
yeah.
Okay, that's so not right.
Uh, that's all right. We can always edit a few things if we have to, but I think we're good. That's part of the fun of it. So
Yeah, okay.
with that though, I'll probably because this is all part of the recording as well. Just to be aware, like as we kind of go through some of those questions, I'm also going to be probably asking you questions I may know, but it's because it's not necessarily for me. So if I'm asking a
Okay, sure.
question, you're like, "Come on, man, we've talked about this before."
You're asking for the world
Yes. uh, uh,
or for our followers.
that's right. Absolutely. It's for the people, the little people out there.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Totally. Cool. All right. Good. Well, I am so happy to like see you. It's always a privilege every once in a while on Sundays to see you guys, but in the place that we're at and all of the craziness that we're living, it's anytime I can see a face, it just like warms my heart a little bit.
Oh,
Yeah,
I know. It's so hard not seeing everybody.
for sure.
It's really hard.
Yeah. Well, and so even when you guys drove past the other day, that was like magic.
I know.
It was so good. Yeah. So good. Sweet. Okay. Well, let's get rolling. What are you
Okay.
going to drink today?
So I am drinking, I have the bottle here, orange Gatorade.
That's so
Yeah.
awesome. That's perfect. That's perfect.
It's refreshing.
Yeah.
It's cold. It's great.
Totally. I like orange better than the red one kind of stuff. But my
Yeah.
favorite is always those like what was like the cool ice or whatever, those like light bluey ones or something.
Uh,
Those are my
yeah,
favorite.
see, I have issues putting blue stuff in my body.
Oh yeah, you're like
Yeah, I
no
can't
alien
do
blood.
like blue drinks, blue popsicles. I can't do blue stuff. It's just weird. I can't even tell you that the taste is different. It's blue.
It's like I can't eat green. That's good. That's good. Well, I'm excited. I'm gonna be drinking the triple threat, which I just
Oh,
picked
what
up
is that?
yesterday. It's from Cabin, which is a Calgary microbrew here, and they are doing great jobs with their drinks. And so this is a New England IPA, and the reason it's called Triple Threat is because they don't have the description here, but I think they're kind of top three brewmasters. They each chose a hop that they liked, like their favorite hop, and then they took all those hops and they smushed it into a nice New England. So I'm very
And
excited.
it has a cool design on the can as well.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Like
That's so cool.
if you go to Cabin to their website or whatever, they have whoever their graphic designer is fantastic. It's just really it's campy, retro-y, just kind of fun. So
Yeah.
yeah, They're doing a good
I know.
job.
I don't even drink beer, and I want to try it just because of the can. It's
Totally. It tastes just like orange Gatorade.
like- it is kind of orangey, actually.
Surprisingly, it's actually really citrusy. Like it has a
Oh wow.
real, yeah, it has a real juicy flavor to it because it's New England. It's got kind of a haze and um, yeah, and the hops aren't overpowering. It's actually really refreshing. Hmm.
Cool.
Ooh, and delicious actually. Ooh, I might need to bring you guys a can, even though you don't drink beer, just so you can smell it.
Okay.
Yeah, good, good. So I don't know if this is going to be episode 2 or 3. We'll see like where we put this in. So I'm not saying welcome to episode 2, even though you're the second person I'm recording. But I've got.
Okay.
I'm still not sure what we're gonna do, if it's gonna be monthly or just whenever it comes out. But we'll tuck it in and we'll do whatever. So I'm excited. This is fun for me.
Well, I was excited when I agreed to do it because I thought I would be interviewing you.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is so cool. I could ask him all these questions.
Yeah. Then you're like, wait a minute, this isn't right. Something's wrong here. Yeah. Fun. Yeah. Good. No, I'm excited just to kind of talk around some of the things that you're excited about and kind of a bit of your story. Get to learn things about you, get to know you a bit more. But it's good. So I'm glad that you're the guinea pig. Actually, you know what? I've been having good response. People have been excited actually to do it. So no fears. Yeah. So that's all good. Anyway, so yeah, I think first off, just trying to get to know you a bit more. Like, how did you get to Bragg, like, or Redwood area? Like, what brought you here? What, like, how did your life take you all the way to where you're at right now?
Yeah, well, love brought me here.
That sounds so magical. That's awesome.
It was magical. So I'm from the States, originally from St. Louis, Missouri. And so I met my husband online. It was an online gaming site. And we were friends for years and years. He lived in Bragg Creek. So when we got married, that's where we landed.
Nice.
And so we lived, when I moved here, we lived on an acreage.
Yeah.
And we lived there for 6 months. I hated it. So, absolutely hated it. It was just way too much nature for me.
Coming from St. Louis to like nowhere land? You mean that wasn't the same?
It was not the same. And so I came in July, and it was July right after the flood. It was July 2013.
Oh my word, yeah.
And there were insects like I have never seen in my entire life. Like these huge bugs. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was quite daunting.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so the whole acreage life was just not for me. It was very isolating because the next neighbor, our acreage was 7 acres. So it's not like you could look out the door and wave at your neighbor. And when I came here, it was funny because I was really, really, really scared of bears eating me alive. And it wasn't until I talked to neighbors on the acreage, they were like, you know what? It's not the bears you need to be worried about. It's the cougars. So it just made everything worse. And so we had a detached garage at the house. And we had this big cowbell outside of our front door. And when I wanted to leave the house, I would literally open the door, ring the big bell, wait for movement, run to the car.
Oh, no. This sounds horrible.
Horrible. And so we had this pond that was on the property, but you had to go through this path through the woods pretty much to get to the pond. And Craig loved going out there, and I never did because I'm like, I'm not walking through that path. And once you get to the pond, it's like, okay, what do you do? But he would sit out there for hours and be like, oh, this is so great.
Meanwhile, you're
So
like, I think we're putting a platter of meat just on this bench for some animal to come and
exactly.
eat. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
for sure.
But luckily, so I don't feel that bad about moving because the house needed a lot of work, and he was tired of working on the house. It was supposed to be his retirement project, but it was getting kind of old for him too. So we ended up moving to Redwood, which is just a beautiful, beautiful place that we both love and our happy medium.
That's right. And plenty more people nearby that animals can eat instead of
Yes,
you, right?
exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah,
if the killer comes in the night, somebody can hear you screaming.
that's true. That is true. That is true. Where you're out where no one can hear you scream at the other place. Oh my goodness. So what was that like
Yeah.
coming at the flood? Like when, like, I mean,
Oh my gosh.
uprooting from St. Louis, you're coming here, you're one in the sticks, but then secondly, like this whole town was like we were a mess. Like we
It was insane.
everybody's
Well,
walking
and
around like a zombie. The
yeah,
stuff like is torn apart. Like, did you just say, "Oh my goodness"? Uh, Outside of love, this is a big mistake.
absolutely not. No, and it just so happened. So I was in Calgary right before the flood came, and that's when we got engaged. And so then I went back home to pack up and get things in order. And he drove, and our stepson Cody drove there to collect me pretty much and move me back here. And so I was able to see a lot of the city before the flood happened.
Yeah,
And while it was going on, it's like he would send me all these pictures and videos of places we had been that was now underwater, which is just astounding.
yeah,
And then it's like, and he talked to me about how in Bragg Creek how everybody pulled together to go rescue animals and help dig people out and do all these things. And so I thought, even though the flood thing was kind of scary, it was like, what a great sense of community to have that and just to have everybody pitch in and bring meals to the community center. And so I felt like I was part of this community even before I got here, just because he was communicating everything to me.
yeah. Well, that's good. That's good that you like felt a little bit of. Sorry, that's my phone. If we have
That's
dogs that bark or kids that scream, that's part of this recording. Like that's part of the new normal and stuff of like
awesome.
interrupting meetings and all of that stuff. So
Yeah.
that's totally fine. Um, well, that's good that like there was like this sense of like, oh hey, there's probably something really redemptive about that community, even before you arrive, just from his kind of like stories about what
Yeah.
was going on. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
it was a pretty remarkable time in that sense too. Like it's amazing how a lot of like secondary or third things get dropped when some of like the most important we're faced with something like extremely important and we got lots
Hmm.
of work to do, right? um
Yeah, absolutely.
no, for
Yeah.
sure. So now that you're here and like you've like participated and such, like what do you like about the community? What are some of those things that are good in that?
Yeah. So, it feels like it's different than what I've ever had in a good way. So I think. So when I lived in St. Louis, my community, the way I always, I don't know, associated with was pretty much the Black community. And it was just Black folks, whether I knew them or not, whether I lived with them or not, work with them or not. It was just, if you're Black, hey, we're like this, we're part of the same community. And that's because, we all come from the same place. We all pretty much eat similar food, same music. We go through this racism crap like every single day. So I can relate to that. So
Yeah,
that was my community. Coming here, there's none of that. So,
yeah, yeah,
none. I think in Redwood, there's maybe one other Black family, and I don't know if they're still here. And I know of one Black family in Bragg Creek. So I don't have that at all.
Yeah.
But what I do have is it's been replaced by my church community, which is awesome. And it's one of those things, I've been in church my entire life and I've never had a church community like this ever. These people are like family. And it's like we seemingly don't have a lot in common other than Jesus, of course, but they're like family.
Just that small thing.
just thing.
That's good.
And so yeah, and so they're like my family when my real family's not here. And yeah, it's something that I've never had.
Yeah. No, for sure. That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
When you're talking about like even in St. Louis, like having like obviously different cultural, aspects to it, was like, I know it's super complicated, so I don't ever want to like reduce something, or I know I will say things wrong all the time, but like I don't want to be like too ignorant on anything. But in your situation or in your community, were you guys did you feel like when you're saying I'm coming from this Black community, were you like geographically kind of in particular areas within the city, or do you just like, hey, I know you, like we're all together across the city, but like there's this commonality of like we deal with the same stuff, we're like, you're my people kind of thing, because we all can identify.
Yeah, it wasn't a geographic thing at all. It's like where I lived, it was a very mixed race community. Even the church I belonged to was mixed race. So no, it had nothing to do with any geographic anything.
Yeah, for sure. Because I was just thinking, like, coming here, obviously there's just the ethnic diversity, even from Calgary, is like still a smaller sliver of what we even see there versus smaller sliver than what you would see, in Toronto or even some of the larger urban areas and such. Yeah. And that creates, can create some like tensions and all of that stuff. Yeah. Have you, I mean, I don't want to be like, poking the bear, but like, do you end up, you say, oh, there's no racism or whatever. Like, I mean, I would say there probably is some somewhere. But is it?
It's when I met Craig, and Craig and I were friends long before we got together. And I used to come home from work and, we'd be online chatting, and I'd tell him about all these things that would happen to me and talking about the racism in St. Louis. And he didn't believe me at all. It's like, you're lying. This stuff doesn't happen. And and now to talk to him, he apologizes to me every day. It's like, I'm so sorry, I didn't believe you.
Oh my goodness.
It's just something about being like, even in St. Louis with all the racism and everything that was going on, it's like when you're with folks who are like you just relax. I don't have to do what I call white speak. I can talk the way we talk, and I can just relax, and I can, just it's just different. Yeah. Yeah. And I do miss that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I've been to St. Louis a couple times. I've been on the arch, done the little weird elevator.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was creepy. It's very creepy because it's like they put you in this washing machine, is what it feels like a barrel washing machine, or dryer, I guess is what it would be. And and they had that nice little video that talked about like correcting the it turns because the mercury hits the switch and it like reshapes all that stuff going up.
Shifts, yeah.
No, that's not cool. It's not cool.
Great. And you notice at the top it actually sways. So when you get up to the top, and it was built to do that.
Yeah. It is, I would have to say, it was like, I'm pretty good with heights, but um, I have to say, when you're looking out, and because it's the arch and there's no, even like Calgary Tower, you could see the tower. You've got that glass thing, you can step out, but you still see
Right.
the base where it's
Yeah.
coming from. But that little window up there where you're just looking out and there's a gap, like it's just open gap.
Yeah.
It's pretty
It's
trippy.
great.
Like it's just kind of nice for sure. And then
Yeah.
obviously there's some decent food around there as well.
Oh,
Kind of
absolutely.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you miss that
Yeah.
part like quite a bit as
Oh
well?
my gosh, yeah. When I go back to St. Louis, I plan every single meal where I'm going to eat. Every meal.
Like
Because
all the
there's
hot
so much
spots?
good food. Yes,
Yeah.
there's so much good food. And I have about 10 ice cream places that I love. So I have to hit up all of those. And yeah, it's,
Nice.
and the barbecue. Oh my gosh.
See, that's where I would be headed, right? Is like the ice cream,
Hmm.
we'll let that go to the side. But finding all of the barbecue and the sandwiches that drip are
Yeah.
kind of my thing. Oh, for
Hmm.
sure. How often do you get to say connect with the family and all of that? Do they come
Well,
up or?
before or after the pandemic.
Well, that's true. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So before COVID, I would get home probably at least 3 times a year. But now it's more difficult, and so I talk to folks on the phone.
yeah. Are you?
Unfortunately, my parents are not really internet savvy, so there's no Zooming or Skyping or any of that. It's just all phone calls. My
Gotcha.
mom doesn't even text. I'll text her and she'll read it, but she won't respond because she can't figure it out. So it's
That's perfect. So
and I'm still trying.
how did you then, like, if they're like completely like, oh, I'm not into this stuff, like how did you get into like the internet and online games and that whole kind of little bit of sci-fi fun part that you have?
Yeah, I have no idea. Not from them, obviously, not from my parents,
Yeah,
but from probably just work. And I guess you have to be sort of savvy working.
yeah, yeah.
I think, yeah,
That's good. That's good. What do
yeah.
you what's your, like, the career that you've kind of worked through?
So I work in health psychology. And so I work as a psychometrist. And so what I do is neuropsych assessments for research. So it's lots of testing of memory and concentration and alertness. And I figure out how you're thinking and what areas you're not doing so well in and that sort of thing. And it's just hilarious I do that because I have the memory of a flea. I can't remember anything. So, and this is what I do for a living.
Are you like, you should be testing me?
I would fail miserably, like all of them.
That's perfect.
But yeah, yeah. So that's what I do. In St. Louis, the last study I worked on was with HIV patients, and so here I'm working at USC, and it's for just a study on elderly, anybody over 50.
Yeah, yeah. And were you
Yeah,
doing again the neuropsychology with the HIV?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah, for sure.
yeah.
And just kind of seeing how the virus ends up
Yeah,
changing.
just
Yeah,
seeing how they progress over time, and it's a what's called a longitudinal study. So we see them at different time points for years,
yeah,
which is cool because you see folks at baseline, and then you keep testing them, and most of the time folks improve, and sometimes not. But it's just kind of cool to watch.
yeah, yeah. What got you that direction? Like, when, like, did you, right from a little child, wake up one day and say, hey, I want to do neuropsychology? That sounds like the best. I know that, like, my friend wants to be a firefighter, but I want to do this.
Yes. Oh no, it's fun. I was always interested in psychology, and I kind of just so I have a bachelor's in psych, and I just kind of fell into research, and yeah, it's stuck.
Yeah, yeah, nice. That's good. And when would
Yeah,
you say like even the excitement in psychology, like where did that come from?
that was in high school. I was just always interested in why people acted the way they did, and you know, I was interested in what motivated people, and uh, just what made people tick, and just why, and how I could help. Because I was one of those folks early on that just kind of saw people that didn't quite, I don't know, live up to their potential or just didn't quite tap into their talents. And, it's like we look at some folks and it's like, oh, you're smart. Like, well, what does that mean? That just means I know a little bit about something. That
Yeah,
doesn't mean that, it's like, what is intelligence? And so I just struggle with labeling people like, oh, you're smart or you're dumb or you can't do this. And I just felt like, if you figure out what you're good at, you figure out your strengths, you can learn to excel in those things. And I always wanted to help people to do that.
yeah, yeah. And would you
Yeah.
say like you saw that like in some of the circles you were around, like friendships, or was it like family or community, like where you're like, what's going on here?
Yeah. Well, again, back in high school, my high school experience, I hated high school, by the way. Hated it. Hated
Really?
it.
Why?
Can I stress that enough? Hated it. Oh my gosh.
Why was it
I
so
think of
bad?
it now and I just like shiver. I don't know. But I started out, I changed high schools my sophomore year. And so the first 2 years of high school, I went to this. It was a really, really large high school. And, there were, I think, probably 1,500, maybe 2,000 students in the entire school, 20 Black students. And I just felt lost, just
Yeah.
lost. Nobody connected to me, nobody reached out to me. And, when you're 13, you can't really exert yourself, except for these kids now. These kids now are superstars. But back when I was coming up, it's like everybody was shy, or I was anyway. And,
you can
it's like,
you can save the kids these days till later on in the conversation, but yeah, I
oh,
agree.
okay,
there's
yeah.
there's a little bit difference. So question, were you pulled out of the community to go to like this one, or like was any of your
Yeah.
friends from junior
Yeah,
high
and I made
moving in?
yeah. So I always went to private school. I went to Catholic school the whole time.
Ah, gotcha.
And yeah, so I just wanted to go to Catholic high school.
Yeah,
So it wasn't the neighborhood kids in the high school. We were all bused.
yeah.
But of the 20 Black kids that were in the school, I was friends with them. And other kids too. But it was just a sense of isolation, and it's just a sense of constantly having to prove yourself and prove that you're not stupid or you're just as good as these other people. And I remember a lot of the kids, it's like there were different tracks of classes. And so, they automatically put like most of the Black kids in these lower tracks, thinking they can't learn like everybody else. And some of us just excelled and they booted us up, but it's like we had to start low and earn our way up there, which is
Oh
just
my
stupid.
goodness.
And so, yeah, and so after 2 years of that, I did like a total 180, and I went to a smaller high school, still Catholic, but it was all Black.
Yeah. Oh, really?
And that was, yeah, all Black in the middle of the city. Again, which was foreign to me because I never lived in the city. So
Yeah.
it's like I never hung out with like just all Black kids ever. So this was different too. And again, I'm shy. And so, during lunchtime, they would have dance parties in the cafeteria. And I was too shy to dance with everybody. I think I had two close friends.
Oh no.
Yeah, I hated it. Just hated it.
Oh, so bad. That's terrible.
Yeah. So what
Yikes.
was the question again?
No, I'm just trying to figure out like what brought you to like neuropsychology, and you're saying
Oh,
how
okay,
horrible,
yeah.
like, but no, talking about horrible high school and such is kind of funny. Like for me, like I would say my junior high like was, I think a lot of people's junior high is awkward in general, right? But I would say
Yeah.
my junior high was like probably the darkest time, like where you kind of feel like you're alone and awkward and things aren't
Yeah.
working and you don't
Hmm.
know what's happening. And I think for me too, like at that point, there was especially later junior high, just when we're getting into high school, there began to be like a big split kind of in like you know kids that are going and really partying and doing stuff that way, and I was too much of like a goody goody to kind of like really jump into that realm. And so a lot
Right.
of my
Yeah.
friends that we were like totally tight in junior high and or elementary, as we moved into junior high, there started to be this like little bit of split, which created a little bit of that
Right.
awkwardness. But
Well,
for
yeah,
you,
and
you're
that's
having
the
that
thing.
take place in high school where it's like I
Right.
don't
And
fit
it's
in
like,
on
well,
this
and I
side
didn't
or the
really
other
do
side.
a junior high because in the Catholic school, it's like it's K through eighth grade and then high school. So there was really no
Yeah.
junior high. But and in high school is one of those things where I didn't do sports, so I didn't fit in with that crowd. And I wasn't a partier, so I didn't fit in with that crowd. And yeah, there was just nowhere where I fit in. I didn't play in the band or anything. I was just this dorky kid that I don't know.
Yeah.
But I got interested in psychology because when I took psychology class in high school, I loved it. And so, the teacher at the time, she's like, well, why don't you subscribe to Psychology Today magazine and you can learn more. And so I did. And yeah, it just grew from there.
That's awesome. That's good.
Yeah.
When you're saying like just I didn't fit in here, I wasn't a party or wasn't in band and all those things. Were you like a pretty straight laced kind of Catholic girl, kind of like, hey, I believe in this stuff and I'm wanting to like
Let me say, so I'll preface this by saying, so yes, but keep in mind, so I got pregnant my senior year of high school.
So there was a little
So
bit of both.
let me just put
Yeah.
that out there.
Okay.
Prior to that, like, and I remember in grade school, I wanted to be a nun.
Did you really?
Totally. I did. I wanted to be a nun.
So you're like, I'm
And
in.
I'm in. I went to mass like every day, even on the weekends when I didn't have to. It's like I was there, I was praying, I was that girl. It's like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
at the time, I thought that's how you serve God. It's like that's how you do it. And I
Yeah.
wanted that to be me. And
Yeah.
then I discovered boys, but
took God, pushed God a little to the side. It's like,
just a little bit. I'm like, well, so I can't have a husband if I'm a nun. So,
no.
so
For some
there's
reason,
a problem here.
yeah, for some reason that does seem to be a bit of a barrier that
Yeah.
they're kind of
Yeah. So
wrestling
the,
through.
the nun thing didn't work out.
Yeah, yeah. I think if you're Orthodox, you're allowed to be married. It just depends on when you're called. So if you're an
Yeah.
Orthodox priest or I think an Orthodox nun, if you're called when you are married, then you're good to go. You get to,
Oh.
yeah, you can still
Yeah,
do
see,
that.
that wasn't a thing when I was coming up.
But that's definitely not in the Catholic tradition at
Well,
all.
another thing in high school, it's like the whole, the nuns have to take a vow of poverty.
Yeah.
I was having no parts of that.
That's so good. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
You're like, no, I don't really want that to be a
didn't
part
want
of
it.
my life.
No,
Yeah, for
not
sure.
at all.
I can relate.
So,
Like I know part of the reasons why I vowed I'd never be a pastor was because my dad was a pastor and not that that was bad. He was good, and like uh I'm sure I didn't see a lot of like the hardships that like the behind the scenes things and things that were
Mm-hmm.
taking place. He protected me of that quite a bit, but
Yeah.
I did see kind of that just, you know, meetings late at night, you know, always on call, um,
Mm-hmm.
not really getting lots of money. You know, that was another thing that I
Yeah.
saw as well. And I'm just like, yeah, I
And
don't think I
how's
want
your
any
life
of this.
different now? How's your
Well,
life different?
well, my life's different is because I vowed I'd never be a pastor, and you don't vow anything to God because
That's true.
that's pretty much saying that you're going to do it. So
Yeah.
that's how that plays out for sure. Yeah. So, did you continue on Catholic faith all the way like past high school and such? And
Oh yeah. I was Catholic until age 30.
yeah,
I was
yeah,
Catholic until I you know, really accepted Jesus as Lord and
yeah.
Savior. And then I left the Catholic Church.
I see. Yeah, good. Can I ask you? Can I ask you a bit more personal question? Was the
Yeah.
church good with you? Like when you know you're a senior in high school and you get pregnant, like were they
Well, it
like did
wasn't
they
the
treat you
church, it was
good?
me. So what happened, so I got pregnant in high school, and I was not one of those loose girls. I was just curious.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Just one of those things. And so when I got pregnant, I felt so bad and ashamed. I stopped going to church.
Oh,
I
so
just
you
stopped.
completely pulled
Because
back
you
over
know,
that.
you
Yeah.
can hide from God, right?
Yes, that's I preach that all the time, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, you can hide from him. And so I just felt so bad. I stopped going to church.
Yeah.
And I was out for, I guess, a couple years. And then I started going to church again
Yeah. No, for sure.
because that wasn't working for me either. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Were there people in your life like trying to drag you back in kind of thing? Or did they say, you know what, this is some time like, you know, some space that you might need to kind of really think about what this really all means and such? Or
yeah, well, you know, it's interesting because my family, so my family, they're all church. They just go to different types of church. So I have families, members that go to Baptist church, some are Catholic, some go to whatever. And so I started going to church with other church members that were
uh
not Catholic.
yeah.
And yeah, and it was one of those things my aunt would call, hey, why don't you come to church with me Sunday? We got so and so coming. Like, oh, okay. And so they kind of got me back in. I don't even know if it was just a conscious thing on their part that they were trying to do. It was just that I guess people saw that, yeah, you need Jesus and you're not happy. Come on.
You
It's
need
like,
Jesus, you're not happy.
you got a kid, get it together.
I think that's one of our pitches, isn't it? Like, hey, you need Jesus, you're not happy.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
the standard evangelical line. For
Yeah.
sure. Did you like have a loneliness there? Just, you know, I'm thinking, okay, you're like sincere. I want to become a nun, and then I like boys, and then all of a sudden, uh, when you're like self-isolating from God in that sense, did
Yeah.
you like have this thing of like I miss you or I want, you know, was there anything there that like, or were you
I
just like
don't,
I'm
you know,
trying to hide?
I was trying to hide,
Yeah.
just absolutely trying to hide. And in that hiding, there was just this enormous loneliness that nobody else could touch.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I didn't have the mental faculties to put it all together,
Yeah.
but other people did. So,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
Did
yeah.
you hide from your friends as well? Like did you kind of pull away
No,
from?
you know, my friends and family, they were all very accepting, you
Yeah.
know, even though, you know, I was the pregnant girl out of wedlock. It's like nobody shamed me or anything like that.
Yeah.
Um, as I said, I was a senior in high school and, you know, in a Catholic school. and their suggestion was, oh, you can go to the pregnant girl school and get pulled out of school. Well, I was a straight A student and I love school. I just hated the school experience, but
Yeah.
I love school. And so my parents were like, no, she's thriving. She's doing fine. If she wants to stay here,
Yeah.
we'll support her. And so I stayed in school. And, my son was actually born on Christmas break. So,
No way.
so yeah, I, so I didn't miss a beat, graduated on time. Everything worked out.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. No, that's
I know.
fantastic. Yeah. And what a blessing too. Like that is a blessing because you hear like of all the horror stories. I've got like friends of mine who yeah, part of like it's not just Catholic system. I mean, it's like the church in general hasn't always done a great job. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Of that. But the one I'm thinking of, like she was in that, and yeah, they yanked her, and it was kind of more just like we're hiding you away, kind of stuff.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
what a blessing that your parents are like, hey, no, she's doing great. We're
yeah.
in this, and we're keeping her in her regular school setting
Yeah.
and all of that.
Well, and a blessing not only for my parents, but my entire family. It's like they all pitched in.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like
yeah,
when my son was born, I'm still in school, so my aunt would babysit, and
yeah.
just I just had so much support. It was crazy.
That is fantastic. No, that's huge.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
yeah,
Good, good.
yeah.
Awesome. So then it's like, hey, love psychology. Let's do this. We're
Yep.
going that direction. Good.
Yeah,
Very good. And it brings you here to Bragg Creek.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it
So
brought me joy. It's like I loved it.
yeah.
And like you, it's one of those professions where you don't make a lot of money at all.
Yeah.
Um,
No, for sure. Uh,
but you get to meet people and touch people's
well,
lives,
and
and
well, and that's just
it's,
it. There's always a discovery part too, right? Like
hmm
you're never like kind of at completion point, right? There's always something a bit
right.
further that you can explore. People grow, and take the next step. So yeah, you're never
Yeah.
fully done, which is
No.
kind of fun as well. Can be
Yeah.
frustrating,
Yeah.
but also fun. Absolutely.
hmm
Yeah. So like what, would you say then really inspires you, like makes you your best self? Like what, now are you like, man, this is when everything is firing quite good and I'm
Yeah.
enjoying this.
I don't. There's lots of things that inspire me. Obviously, when I read the Word or read the Bible, it's like it's inspiring. I don't know why I don't do it more, but it's I just scratch my head because I go through these periods where it's like, okay, God, it's me and you. And I'm like, for weeks, it's me and you. I'm in the Word, I'm hearing from Him. It's like beautiful. And then I stop,
Yeah.
coast a little bit, and I'm like, wait, I'm missing something here. And then
Yeah.
I go back. It's like, I don't know. He's like, but you get it together, girl.
Yeah.
So that's always inspiring me. And just hearing other people's stories, just about where they've come from, and seeing people struggle and things they have to go through. It's like it inspires me to want to help them. Not that I want to see anybody go through anything bad, but
Yeah.
it just gives you a door of where how you can step in. And I think that's why we're here, to help each other.
Yeah. No, for sure. Absolutely. I think, I mean, you're kind of sharing kind of that like a classic response that I think everybody does, right? It's like, oh man, this is so good and I should do more of it and such. And then you don't do it. And
Yeah,
then you end up being like, no, what's going on? Like, why I
yeah.
feel empty or I don't feel healthy or whatever. And then you're like, oh,
hmm
why did I let some of that go? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even when I'm going through just day-to-day struggles and things, it's like sometimes it's like I forget to pray about it.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
Craig will say, "Did you pray?" I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah. He's like your Holy Spirit, is what he is, just kind of
He
reminding
is.
you, like
He
your
totally is.
the conscience, just kind of,
Oh my
letting
gosh.
you. No, for sure. I think. Well, that's we'll have a problem. We'll try and figure it out ourselves. And we'll
Right.
just go and go until like God's the last resort, right? It's like, oh, finally, I'll
Yeah.
just guess I'll pray about it, right? Rather than kind of going
Yeah.
there first, right?
And when has that ever worked out when we try to figure stuff out
Yeah.
on our own? It's like, whenever. When does that work?
Yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, like, on that sense of like, hey, these are things inspire and all of that stuff, like, what are like some of the most important things you've learned? What are you learning, even now, right? What was your life like before, you kind
Yeah.
of went through some of those things?
Yeah. I think hands down, this was actually like a defining part of my life. And it was around the time when I came to Jesus. And it was like I learned how to lean on the Lord, literally. And so, what happened is like I'm coasting through life, just doing my thing. And I'm 30 years old. And for some reason, out of the blue, I started having panic attacks. I
Hmm.
don't know if you've ever had one, but you think you're dying. It's like all of a sudden, it's like I'm short of breath. It's like I'm breaking out into sweat. I think I'm going to pass out. It's like chemotherapy, actually.
Sorry, I'm not trying. I shouldn't laugh at that. You're allowed to laugh at that.
I
I'm
know,
not.
because yeah, that's what it's like. And, it happens, it only lasts for about 15 minutes and then it's over. But I started getting them just at church, at work, all these places, and I didn't know what was going on. And so we finally figured it out, and it lasted for about a period of 6 months and got under control. But when it was going on and I'm in the thick of it, my mom gave me a scripture book. And it was one of those books where, it has all these tabs where if you're feeling anxious, here's scriptures to address that. If you're feeling scared, if you're feeling whatever, and it was these targeted scriptures. And she said, you know what? Here's something on anxiety. When you feel the panic attack coming, you read these things out loud. And so I'm like, okay. And so that's what I did. And it worked. And it worked where, I still thought I was going to die. But I thought now with the scriptures in hand, well, if I die, I just get to see Jesus a little bit sooner and it's okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it just took that whole fear away from it. And so
Yeah.
ever since then, I learned that, when I'm going through anything, I find a scripture to address that issue. And I
Yeah.
just get it in me. And it just helps.
For sure. So,
Yeah.
where did you ever find out like what kind of triggered it, or did it just rise out of?
Yeah, it was a hormonal thing.
Gotcha. And that
Yeah.
sparked it. Yeah, for sure. Did
Yeah. And so,
it's interesting. Like, I haven't had one. Obviously, I've talked with many people that do have them and have had them in
yeah.
the past and such. And um, one of the things that time and time again that seems to be the thing that helps is both that recognizing, one, oh, this is what it is, like even just self-identifying, like,
Right.
I feel like I'm
Yeah.
dying in my heart and I'm sweaty and I'm clammy. Is that a heart attack? What's going on? But then once you get to the place where you can then identify it and just kind of name what it is, like, oh, this is a panic attack, and I'm not
Right.
gonna die, that
Yes.
really like seems to like take some of the power away from it, right? I mean, it's
Oh,
still there. You still
absolutely.
feel some of the
Yeah.
physical stuff, but it doesn't take you down the echo chamber, the reverb chamber, where
Right.
it gets bigger and bigger
Yeah.
and bigger. And also
Hmm.
then, yeah, exactly what you're saying, when you identify it and then you're kind of like recognizing like some of the bigger pictures around it, like
Yeah.
and that's where I would say like the scripture around you know anxiousness and such really helps
Hmm.
you stay like a little bit more grounded, or see a like a further out kind of picture in that, and
Right.
then also say, hey, I got this, like it's okay, I
Yeah.
got this.
Well, and it was weird because mine, I think most people have them. It's situational.
Yeah.
Mine was not. It was strictly related to my hormones. It
Yeah.
happened. I would wake up from sleep with a panic attack.
Yeah.
Just, it was really bizarre.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think sometimes the
So I think, you know,
situational,
I just see it as God like knocking on my head, like, okay, you're gonna come. Or like,
yeah.
how long are you gonna fight me with this?
So that moved you toward like jumping into scripture a bit more and said, oh, hey, this obviously then has some value or whatever. And then
Absolutely.
that took you the next step into like, you know what, maybe I should like reconsider where my faith journey is and such at that time.
Yeah, because I felt like I'd just been playing church up until then. Um, and even, you know, like, when I wanted to be a nun, it's like there was never really this real relationship with God. It was just me thinking, oh, I just want to be holy. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it wasn't even about me wanting to help other people. It was
Yeah.
just I didn't want to be bothered
Sure.
with people. And I'm like, I can be a nun and just pray all day
Yeah.
and get to live with the sisters.
That's right. It sounds like a perfect lunch to me.
I know. And have these communal meals. It's like,
That's so good. You're just like, okay, pros and cons. So let's just go through them. Pros, meals, holy. I'm in the right books, you know, without doing stuff. Like cons, no
oh
boys.
my gosh.
Yeah, no, for
Yeah.
sure. That's awesome.
Oh.
Yeah. Well,
Well, and then, you know, there's a transition because, you know, just growing up, I think most people are probably in this boat, whether you're Catholic or not. It's like you accept Jesus so you won't go to hell.
yeah,
That's the reason.
yeah, yeah,
And I think we've all evolved from that.
yes, yeah, for sure.
It
They're
just took me 30 years.
yeah, no, for sure. I think it is a man. That's a whole nother conversation, just around how like the language and culture, and I think too, uh, like there's all of that within churches and such in the way that we've the things that we prioritize or the things that had been put, you know, as focus in
Mm-hmm.
churches, you know, and obviously I think there's been some shift in some of those and trying to focus or think of different language and such. But also you got to remember like we all have that negativity bias, right? Like we're much more attentive to the things that can harm us, the things that are going wrong. I don't know what the stats are, but it's like, you know, you can have like 10 bad things or 10 good things said that equal
Yeah.
one bad thing, and they'll negate each
Right.
other,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not equal, right? One to one, it doesn't work because we have that negativity bias. And you know, part of it is
Yeah.
like, again, it's probably smart because things that can kill you are negative, and so we're attentive to that. But things that are like, say, tasty, they're good, but they're not gonna kill you necessarily like immediately, right? In the long run, they'll kill you for sure.
Immediately. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I
Yeah.
think, you know, when it comes to then like our process around hell and such when we're kids, man, just humans in general, when that becomes a, when that is the topic of conversation, it becomes a big deal to us. Like we're very
Yeah.
attentive, right? And then we're like, well, I don't want that, or I, you know, all of that
Right.
stuff. And then we're like, how do I get out? What do I got to do to like be right and all that
Yeah.
stuff? And it ends up, yeah, consuming a lot of our, I think, you know, relationship or faith journey is just trying to like beat that thing, you know, that we know is
Exactly.
looming. And you're right. I mean, I
Exactly.
think it
Yeah.
takes a long time to kind of move to a place of maturity of like, oh, there's so much more than not that thing. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think anytime that you do things just to when the negative thing just makes you, I'm totally losing my thought here.
We're talking about like how uh, hell ended up being kind of your early journey.
Right,
I
yeah,
don't want to go to hell. I want to be a good girl, that kind of stuff. And then it
yeah,
wasn't until you kind of were in your 30s where then you're like, you know what? There's something more to this God thing than just, you know,
yeah.
you know.
Well, it just, I think it comes down to being motivated by fear or being
Yeah,
motivated by
yeah,
love.
yeah, for sure.
And when you do things because you're motivated out of fear, it's never a good
Yeah,
thing.
no,
It's ever, ever.
no.
And, the whole, I don't want to go to hell. It's like, I'm not thinking about anybody but me.
Yeah,
And so who is that serving?
yeah,
Instead of, later on, it's like, okay, I want to come to Jesus because I want his love. And
yeah,
I want to learn how to love other people. That's what it's about. It's
yeah,
just
for
not
sure.
about me not going to hell.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, totally. Well,
Yeah.
and that moves nicely into like the question of like, yeah, it's a small question of like, why are we here? Like, what is the meaning of life? That's, I'll just
Yeah.
pour a little bit more. I'm, I'm sure you've got all of that wrapped up in a
Oh, I
nice.
have the answer. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I think one thing is we're here to love on each other.
Yeah,
And I think that's what it's about. I do.
yeah,
However you feel you can do that, that's what it's about.
yeah,
Um, One thing I can do is like I can let my light shine. I can help to give people hope. And my hope is in Jesus, and I want to point them to him and like, hey, see, I got this, so you can have it too. So you
yeah,
don't need to be walking around with your head hanging down thinking, what's the point? Life is futile. It's like, no,
yeah,
you love people. That's what it's about.
yeah, yeah. No, for sure. And would you say some of that goes into like, the question around like what makes life better? You know what I mean, as well? Like, or is there something
Yeah,
else that would like make life better? Like if we've got this big
it's much.
picture of like we're here to love people and like that seems to
Yeah,
be like kind of the purpose behind it. Is there
yeah.
anything that day to day, moment by moment that kind of makes life you know, to the best, I guess?
I think you can figure out what you can do to make something better for somebody else, whoever that is.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I do.
yeah. No, that's good. That's very good. Sweet. Okay. One little question as well. Is there anything that you and I would disagree about at all?
Probably.
Yes, is the answer.
Yes. So, well, and here's the thing. So, I'm almost afraid to say I don't want to be labeled as a heretic or like
Okay, so
blasphemous.
let's talk about the elephant in the room. This question I've added in because I think there's a lot of fun things around it that we can get into conversation. However,
Yeah.
this question really does scare me the most because I know that, um, you know, as I interview people, some of it will be like, fun and campy. Some of it, though, is going to be a little bit more serious. And I'm just, again, always afraid of like going into places that are going to cause too much problem. This isn't about like having a debate or a got you thing or whatever. It's more
Yeah.
so, what do you think we might disagree on? And
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, yeah,
some
yeah.
of that stuff.
Well, and
Yeah.
I'll tell you, it's like my thing, even though I think we may disagree, I don't really care.
That's perfect. That is exactly what we need to have going into this.
It's
For
like
sure.
it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
But so I have this thing. So I consider myself, I call it a hell agnostic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's like I went from like growing up thinking, if you miss the mark, you're going to burn in hell. And now it's like, is there really a hell? I don't know. And I think in my own life, it doesn't matter if I'm right or not, because the fact that I may not believe in a hell, it doesn't affect how I treat people. It doesn't affect how I live my life. It doesn't affect anything other than I'm not envisioning people burning in this place
Yeah.
or, with snakes or whatever. I'm just not there. So, yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And would you say
And I
even,
just,
oh, go ahead.
oh, and I just think, with this whole, so as you know, so I was diagnosed with breast cancer this time last year. It's been a hell of a year. And it just makes you realize how life is short. It's just too short. And it's like, do you want to harp on your differences with people and, where you may or may not agree? It's like, who cares? Just find some common ground and love on each other.
Yeah.
That's where I am.
Kind of puts things into perspective, right? Like you're
Yeah,
saying
absolutely.
all of this other stuff that we've been focused or worried about, just you're like, I don't necessarily have those same worries
I
anymore
don't.
going through
It
that
yeah,
process. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and it's like this whole discussion, even earlier, it's like when we're talking about community and all that, it's like this past year, it's like I've been in during periods where I literally could not function and people were stepping in on my behalf. I've never had that ever,
Yeah.
ever, ever. And
Yeah.
it's like people would call, there were days when I literally had zero will to live.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
and I know I'm here today because, Anne called and was like, how are you? I want to die. No, you don't. And she would pray me out of it.
That's so awesome. And that's a good response. No, you don't. Oh, oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Wow. Well, I mean, that shines a good picture on like kind of what we are about, right? What we should be
yeah,
focusing on, right? Coming
yeah,
alongside.
absolutely.
No, for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah. When do you think,
yeah.
when did you think you kind of had some of those things around the doctrine of hell? when when would you say some of that changed?
This was probably around the same time. This is a recent thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think, it's like I was so sick. It's like I just, some days I could just listen to audiobooks and
Yeah.
so I've just done a lot of reading and listening to podcasts and that sort of thing. And it just makes you think about things that you normally wouldn't think about. I mean, who thinks about hell every day?
Yeah.
But it was just one of those things I just happened to listen to and like, there's maybe something to this for me.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, I mean, I think you're onto
So,
something. Like, who thinks about hell every day? I don't think a lot of people do, or at least they shouldn't. I mean,
yeah.
Jesus only mentioned it. Well, it's only mentioned, I think, 14 times in like the New Testament. It might be only 12 in the Gospels. I'm not sure. So it's not
Yeah.
a compared to like love or service or even just other things like money. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
there's
Yeah.
there's a lot of other topics that he kind of addresses uh than the 14 times he talks about you know that thing. So I mean,
I
if
know
it
it's
if
weird
it's
though, because
not
growing up,
if it's
I was
not
gonna say
on your
growing up, it's like I was thinking about it all the time.
yeah, yeah.
First,
Well,
yeah,
and if it's not on your consciousness, like now, you're probably more Jesus-like than you were before. Is what it's like. Yeah, for sure. No, I agree. I mean, it was definitely like we already talked about. That was something that was looming overhead for quite some time. Yeah.
yeah,
No, it's interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that because I don't think you're alone in that conversation. And I know there's a lot of
hmm
varying degrees on uh, like people even within our church, like are going to be
yeah,
wide ranges. on all of that, which is good. And so the fact that you're bringing that out is a good place where maybe even further discussion can
Yeah.
take place.
Well,
Yeah,
and I do say I love that about our church. It's like I think it is a community church, and
yeah,
people come from so many backgrounds. And I've had conversations with people, and I've left like, "You believe what?" or "You don't believe this?" It's like, "Who are you?" But in the end, it's like I don't really care, because at the end of the day, it's like they're still part of my community, and they're there, and you know they're pitching in, and they're loving on
yeah.
everybody. So I don't
Oh,
care.
for sure. Good. Now, to bring it back to me, because I always like to bring it back to me, you know. So, um, uh, put your psychology hat on. What would be like the reason that you think we're in disagreement about that? Is it like, oh, you know, you're a pastor, it's your job to like what would be the, or you always you preach about health all the time, you know? uh
I don't think I've ever heard you say hell out of your mouth, actually.
it's a swear word, so I
It
don't.
is a swear word.
It's not appropriate. in
Oh, I've
fact
heard
i
you
in
say
fact
other
i
words, though.
in fact I slur it. I say hill because I don't want to say hell. I remember a friend of mine, he was telling about his dad. He was reading um, I think, yeah, it was like the uh, the birth of Jesus account. So, and it was in the King James, and he
Mm.
didn't want to say like Mary was riding on an ass. Like he didn't want to say that. Like so he would say as. Like he would like slur
Oh
his
my
word.
gosh.
Yeah, it was like such a thing. So that just makes me think. I never say hell either. I just say hell, hill. Yeah, because it's a
That's
swear.
so funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's good.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I mean, so my silence on it then just says, well, he's Orthodox there. That's where we'll place him. He's a pastor. He's gonna go that direction. Okay, that's
Yeah.
cool. I like that.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
glad it's not something psychological. Like, no, he must believe in that literal, ongoing, tormenting hell because he's a sick man.
Oh my gosh.
I'm glad that's the answer you didn't give. So,
No. Yeah, so yeah, I think my answer is just what you just said. It's because, you're a pastor, and I don't know. You just make assumptions about what people
yeah.
believe, whether they do or not. And it's one of those things where I don't really want to have a conversation about it.
Do you not want to have a conversation because you don't want to be confronted with things, or because it's like, it's just not worth my time?
It's just not worth it to me. Because,
Yeah.
like if you believe one way, it's like I'm sure you can whip out books and proofs and all this stuff where I just don't care. And
Yeah.
it's not going to influence me, so we don't need to go head to head on with it.
Yeah. No, for sure. Good.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I love it. This is perfect. This is exactly where we need to like end off, because
Cool.
I want all the good conversation to come from all of this. But
Yeah.
yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
listen, couple things. I'm glad I'm talking to you. I really am.
Okay.
No, like legitimately. Like I am glad that you're here and I'm talking to you because um yeah, you've gone through, like you said, a hell of a year. Absolutely, or sorry, a hill of a
Yeah.
year.
Oh.
And yeah, and and we want to, you're always like focused on the best outcomes and praying for you and all of that stuff, but you always have those moments where you're having that bad day and you're saying, man, I feel
Yeah.
like I want to die. And you're like, oh, like what is going on here? Right. And so
Yeah.
like, it is such like, I am so, so thankful that like we get to have this conversation, because you're a beautiful, wonderful, you make me laugh all the time. And you bring something so like amazing to our community and to the church. Like you really do. Like um
Oh,
and I'm just grateful that that's something that we get to be, a part of. We get to experience even more of,
thank you so much. You're just so wonderful.
even
It's
if
like,
it
and
is.
I have to say, like the whole just cancer journey, it's like I've been really transparent and open with it, because it's scary.
Yeah,
And I'm not going to be the last person to go through this, first of all. And it's like, if I could help the next person, if they could look at me and say, okay, Neva went through this, and it's so not me, it's like all of you.
yeah.
It's my community. I feel like
uh,
my community went through this and they did this for me.
yeah.
I got the sucky part, but it's
That's right.
like,
For some reason you drew this small straw on that. Yeah,
yeah, I got the
whatever.
small straw,
Yeah,
and it's like, what a God that must love me to put me on the heart to so many people, just
yeah,
coming out of the woodworks. And
for sure.
you have just been so amazing, just to my entire family. It just thank you.
Well, it
Just
is.
thank you for being you.
Yeah, well, it is both like easy and a joy to be in your guys' life, right? It's not a
Oh,
chore by any means. And you know what? Like, it is beautiful to see, like, when we talk about like the glory of God, we kind of, or giving him props and all that stuff. Yes, he's in the healing part of things, but we see the glory of God in the community, right? Like the people
yeah,
who are like stepping up, and that is a beautiful thing. Like
yeah.
you can't not just like kind of be like, man, people can, when they step up, and it's just so amazing
Hmm.
and so awesome,
It
and
is
it's a
amazing. It's
beautiful, beautiful
awesome.
thing. No, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have to tell you, so I was talking to my friend Cindy. You met her once. And just 2 days ago, I was having this conversation with her, and she's just out of the blue. I love your pastor. It's just like, he's married, right?
That's right. Yeah.
It's
Well,
just like, no, no, no. I just love him because he seems like he really, really cares. I'm like, yeah, he does. And so thank you for that.
well, thanks for turning it back on me, because that's how I really wanted to end. Yes, absolutely. Oh, for sure. No, it's good. We have a good community. We've got a good church. It's
Yeah.
fun to be in the mix of it all, and it's not perfect. Obviously, there's still like lots of messy things around here, but
Yeah.
you know what? That's life. That's the part of life that's
Oh,
actually good.
absolutely. Yeah.
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 Awesome. Good. Okay.
All
I
right.
am. Any last words? I'm gonna hit the stop record here.
Nope.
Okay. Here we go. I'm stopping recording right